Good afternoon everybody, Shaky Painter here. So this is a new video for the series of the Sisters of Battle as they get called. So what we're looking at today is just the base. So we're going to start off with a nice layer of Zandri Dust. So remembering two thin coats at all times. So you'll see as I start to put the first one on, it is quite thin. So I'm using the size 1 brush there, and we're just going to get that on nice and quick, as you can see, just quickly all over. And as I say, two thin coats should get you a nice solid colour. You can see there it is a little bit watery. I've watered it down more than normal over a base coat of grey seer. So moving the paint quickly, I'm not going to go back over areas that I've already done once. You might see me there, if I miss a bit I'll just go back. So we'll get that all over nice and quick. So this is the first of a series of videos where I'm going to take you through all of it. We're going to take you through from the beginning, from the base all the way through to the sisters themselves, the cherubs, everything, and hopefully get a nice little series going of all of the sisters stuff that's coming out and all new. I've got a box full. I did buy the Combat Patrol set. I've got some older bits as well and some characters, so hopefully by the end of it should have a nicely painted up army ready to go. I do use a mixture of normal and contrast paints, and as we go through I'll name the paints out for you and any brushes that I might use. I did tend to do most of it with this size 1 brush. It's got a good point on it. It's an H&S Stadler brush, so it is quite handy to use, just having the 1 brush at all times. So as you can see, no band on today. I'm having a good day today, so no real tremors. So there we are with 2 thin coats of Zandri Dust. We're going to start adding some panel shading. Now I wanted to give this a bit more of a grimy look than the clean bone impression that's on the box art. So instead of using Nuln Oil or Agrax Earthshade, I am actually using Athonian camo shade. It just gives it a bit of a mossy green feel to it. So looks like the base is a little bit old and a little bit ruined there. As you can see, just dropping that into the recesses. Now I'm not overly fussed at this point if the shade goes onto the Zandri Dust. It just adds to the mossy feel of it all. So all of the little recesses there, we're going to get those done and get those filled in quite nicely. It's not particularly quick job, but these brushes are nice and heavy, especially for someone with a tremor like myself. It does hold it back a little bit. It holds those shapes at bay a little bit. So as you can see, just doing the steps there as well. You can see that I've put the Zandri Dust around the top layer of the base. Now the bottom layer, I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with it yet. I am thinking maybe just some Steel Legion drab or even just some black to make it stand out. However, this model will have quite a lot of black on it with the sisters' robes themselves. So moving all the way down, a little bit too much paint on the brush there. We just do all the steps themselves, the recesses of the steps. And what I'm not going to do though, and you'll see, is I'm not going to put that in the centre at all, because I'm going to use a shade paint in the centre. I'm not going to worry about that too much, but I am doing the outside edges there. And like I say, I'm not going to do those centre bits at all. Now I'm not putting any of the shade in the fleur-de-lis. I am going to use some Apothecary White in there, just to add a little bit of shade for it. I'm just pointing out there all the other pieces, and there you can go. You can see that slightly green shade that it's given, but it has brought out them quite nicely. Now one of my first contrast paints here, I'm going to use some Basillicanum grey just on those rocks. Again, great thing about contrast paint is we are going to do some dry brushing in a minute all over it. So all I'm trying to do is just get a nice little coverage of there. I'm only using one coat, not a lot of paint on the brush as you can see. And I'm just moving it around nice and quick. Not letting it settle too much. I don't want it to be too dark. Although we are going to use a dry brush over the top. I don't need to worry too much about these rocks being overly perfectly covered, just because the rocks, like I say, are going to be dry brushed. Okay, so you want to get that on all of the rocks that we can see, just the little ones that are sitting on the steps. Now I had planned on adding more stuff to this base, so little tufts and some sand around, just to give it a bit more of a sandy feel to it. But actually, once it was done, I thought, no, it looks all right as it was. And you'll have to excuse me, a bit of cold. I apologise for it being a while since my last video. I have been suffering a little bit with focusing, so I've not been able to focus too well on getting things done, and of course real life gets in the way as well, work, etc. So just continuing on, working on those rocks, and we're going to keep that going. Now here I swap over to some Agrax dunes. Okay, now this is quite difficult to do because it is a flat panel. You can see the tremors are starting up slightly there. So just moving it around, trying to get it more than anything into those recessed areas. And I just want to give it a little bit of a shade. So it's got a little bit of tonal difference between the Zandri Dust and that area there. It will dry a little bit smoother. It will dry a little bit smoother than it looks when I'm putting it on. But what I'm trying to do there is orientate the model so that I'm always stroking downwards. I'm going to go across in a second, just there, and then I'm going to pull it down again. You can see it goes on quite clumpy there. But I think once it's dried, the texture that those little shade details have added, or those little heavier areas have actually added quite a depth of texture to it. Just a little bit out of camera there. Now you can see here I do go over the line slightly at the bottom, putting a bit of a mess in, but that's fine. You can tidy that up afterwards. Just go back in with some Zandri Dust. Now after I had done the Zandri Dust, I did go back in and tidy up all the fleur-de-lis with the grey seer pot of paint. And yes, you will see I've noticed that I've missed a rock that, for Zandri Dust, that is hanging on the right of the base. I do go back in later and just I spotted that while I was filming, so I've gone back in, and you'll see that a bit later on that I have gone over it. Now you can see I've gone over a little bit there. That's not the end of the world, so just clean the brush up. When I spot it, I'll just clean the brush up, a little bit of water, and just suck up that bit of paint. Although they do dry quickly, you do have a little bit of wiggle room. You do have a little bit of a wiggle room to get in there and just tidy stuff up. Again, sorry about that out of camera, still new to all of this. There we go, so that Agrax dunes, as you can see, when it started drying, you can see that I've tried to tidy it up a little bit. I'm not overly fussed, you're not going to see that too well. Remember, we're not painting this to professional levels, we're only painting this for our own enjoyment. So you can see there, got some Tyrant Skull, Terminatus, sorry, on there. And I'm just going to give it a dry brush all over. I'm going to go over absolutely everything. Just gently trying to catch those stairs and the rocks just to bring out those highlights. The dusty effect gives it a better look, I think, than going in with a straight highlight. The highlight itself, if I was to go with an edge highlight, I think it just looked too neat. And obviously we're going for a rock. We're going for a rocky look and a dirty, sandy kind of colour. It's a little bit harder just there, just to bring those ledges out. And I'm going to go over everything, all over the centre, everything. More than anything else, with those fleur-de-lis, instead of having to go back in and tidy up the little fleur-de-lis is there, the dry brush will do most of that work for us when we add the gold later. So again, using my nice large dry brush there, I'm putting the paint on and then taking off quite a lot of it. By taking off quite a lot of the paint, you know, you can always add more, but you can't take it away. I think it does its job perfectly, brings out even those Basillicanum grey rocks, making sure I get the edges there. Now I don't use dry brushing a lot in my normal painting, just because I like clean lines. So in that centre there, going around in circles, just trying to catch all the edges that I can. And I think the dry brush brings out those rocks quite nicely, gives it a nice little highlight and sets it all off to pieces. And then again, this side here, a little bit heavier on the brush, and we're just trying to catch those, like I say. And then back in the centre, going round and round. And what we're doing is we're toning down that Agrax genes as well, so we just get that slight tonal change. Okay, so now we're going to use that Apothecary White, just to do all those fleur-de-lises. It gives it that off-white feeling of stone as well, which I quite like, as well as the shade. So we're going to do that all over those white panels of the fleur-de-lis. Now one thing I did miss and I didn't re-record is inside there's a few dimples. I've just popped some Agrax genes in there, just for a little bit of tonal change, instead of just going over them with Apothecary White. And you can see with the Apothecary White, I'm just popping it on and then moving the paint around, keeping it moving, keeping it moving, keeping it moving, soaking up any of the excess, and just moving it around again. If I think I've got too much on one area, give it another couple of passes, pick it up on the brush, and then move it around. It doesn't look very different on here, but once it's all finished, you can start to see that there's a slight grey-blue tinge to it coming through, but it's sitting in the recesses nicely. And it's bringing up those fleur-de-lis, which I believe is what they're called on there. Even the ones, you know, if you go over a little bit of the Zandri Dust area that you've done, it's not a problem. It all adds to texture and basing and stuff like that. So the building works are still going on here, guys. I'm really sorry, you can still hear that. I'm having to do this mid-afternoon just so I can get it out ready in time, because it has been a while since I've dropped anything for you guys. So I just want to get this recorded, get this one out, and then we can start working on the sisters themselves. The next video should be the tomb itself. But we shall see. So there we go, there's all the Apothecary White done completely on it. And now we're just going in with some iron hand steel, just to do all the metal pipes. Now when I did the metal pipes themselves, I didn't highlight them afterwards. I did give them a little bit of a clip with Stormhost Silver, but I didn't want them to stand out too much. I wanted them to look a little bit more grimy. So I put some Agrax earthshade over the top to shade them, to shade that down, just to stop it looking quite so shiny against the sandstone. So don't forget the skulls in the middle, so we're going to do those as well. I like the contrast of the silver against the gold in there. So the ones at the top and the ones at the bottom, and also don't forget to do the grating that is around. There's two of them on there, as you can see. don't forget to get those done as well. Okay, so now we've got those done, you can see they're nice and shiny. And we don't really want them that shiny. It's supposed to be grimy. It's, you know, they're the sisters. They're meant to be, you know, battle weary. So we shade them down with a bit of Agrax earthshade. Again, I'm not too worried if the shade spills. It adds to that texture on the sand, or the sandstone, should I say, and it all adds to the griminess that it is. Now the characters themselves will be quite clean, but this is a war-torn shrine, as it were, I suppose, taking St Katherine herself into battle. So just making sure that that shade settles in the recesses. Now we're going to do the same for the skulls, and we're going to give the same shade of Agrax over the top of the grate as well. That darkens that down quite a lot. I think I went back in with Rungfang Steel, not Stormhost Silver, just to brighten them up a little bit. Rungfang Steel is still quite a darky kind of silver, and it sits in with that steel pattern that we've got going. And then in the middle, we just go a little bit heavier with that shade, and as you can see, it straight away brings out those skulls nicely. Okay, so now that Agrax earthshade is all settled and dry and nice, you can see the real shade that's brought out the middle of it. Yeah, so we get our brushes nice and clean and we start moving on. You can see the Agrax dunes there on the right hand side that I've added, and I've done that stone. So now what we're going in with some Retributer Armor. Just all those all the fleur-de-lis, the big one in the middle and all around the outside. So nice thin layer of this. I know sometimes it looks like I'm going heavy with it, but actually I'm not. It is quite thin down. Retributer Armor I always find a bit of a funny paint to work with. Sometimes it's a bit hit and miss. You can thin it down and it looks really washy, or you can thin it down and it looks really solid. All my paints are shaken to within an inch of their lives normally. But I just find it a bit of a hit and miss paint to use, but it's still one of the brightest, I think, one of the best looking golds out there. So just work your way through slowly, taking your time, making sure you can get those. And you can see I'm not actually putting any weight on the brush. It's something that I've learned recently, is to be a lot more gentle with the brush and to stroke the model more than actually kind of pressing down the brush. Now these, you can get through these quite quickly. Just a light touch on the brush will pop out those little details quite nicely. and as you can see, it's coming together. So just take your time, work around those, nice and quick. Now with all those done, you can see that there's a bit of a shine on them already. We're going to go in with some Blood Angels contrast paint, and we're going to start doing the roses. This for me was the hardest bit, the smallest details. I'm still using that #1 brush with a good point on it, just to try and get those roses nice. I found it quite taxing, quite difficult to do, and it was about getting the right amount of contrast paint on my brush, just to make sure that I wasn't over, I wasn't using too much. There's a stone there, but it seems to do its job. It sits nicely, gives it that nice blood red colour that we want. I decided not to highlight these. I quite liked the flatness of them. I liked the way they looked, and the contrast paint kind of did its job for me there. So just work your way around, take your time to get these done. There are a few of them. It's a case of hunting the model or checking the box art to see what you can see in terms of getting those done. So as you can see, they're a little bit too much contrast paint, but that wasn't an issue. I just moved to another area because I had a bit too much paint on my brush, realised I'd missed a spot, went back in, and then when that paint starts to dry out, I'll just dip back into that little puddle over there and pick that up. Alternatively, wet your brush. So there's the roses done. You can see that they've got some nice indentation. Now with this, we're giving this, well, we weren't at that point because I didn't have anything on my brush, but there we go. Some Reikland fleshshade just over that gold, just to darken it down a little bit. You can see it dropped into the recess there, which I didn't want it to do. I had a bit too much on, so I'm just going to take that away and go over the top of it again. And then just do the Reikland fleshshade over the top of the big fleur-de-lis and then all the little ones. And the little ones were pretty easy to do. It was just a once over. I wasn't too worried about it. You know, just straight over the top, and it's almost job done. And we're almost there now. It's come together quite nicely. I like the way it looks. I'm happy with it. Once the sisters go on the top, bear in mind the focus is going to be a lot on the sisters, not so much on the base, but you know, the old adage, faces and bases, we do want to get it together as nice as we can. Now again, I've just dropped out of camera there, but you guys know what I'm doing. So the Reikland fleshshade straight out of the pot. Okay. Missed a little bit there by the looks of it. Okay, so we're into the home stretch now. A little bit of Rungfang Steel, just to bring those up a little bit. Went quite lightly over the top, just so I could pick up the grating edges more than anything else. And again, quite lightly down the centre of those, just to bring out those skulls a little bit more. just make them pop a little bit, which you can see they do. They suddenly just appear, which is quite nice. Okay, and that tiny little bit of Rungfang Steel, just very gently over the top, just to accentuate a little bit of it. I didn't do too much on there. I liked it as it was grimy. I just wanted to add a little bit of shine to it where the light would catch on the front. So just there like that, and then just finishing up with those grates that I spotted. Okay. And then last but not least, before we finish up, we're just going to use some Liberator gold just on those fleur-de-lises, just to bring them out again against the contrast. Now with the flat ones, as you can see, I kind of just roughly popped it on and moved it around. I wasn't too worried about it sort of being as flat as it were, because I think the Reikland fleshshade needs to come through. And with those little ones, just straight down the middle and straight out either side, straight across. It's a very light touch. It just makes them pop a little bit more. Obviously bear in mind they are going to be covered up by the tomb itself. So there we go, guys. The first of the videos for this model done. The smaller videos coming will be for each of the sisters in the tomb. We'll do a separate one for the cherubs as well, and then we'll have one just displaying it all together. So keep an eye out. If you like what you've seen, subscribe, hit the thumbs up and the bell, just so you get notified when the next one comes up. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video.